I will have it.
Hey guys, new video for Last Epoch. So this video we're going to go over my mana stacking spark charged build. We're going to do a full build guide on it because I pretty much have I think all the info I need to actually make a good build guide. I've tested out the build quite a bit to see what works, and so far it's been pretty insane. So a little bit about the build. This build is basically using a spark charges with Fragment of the Enigma for our damage. We also have Dragon's Claw for some extra proc stuff. We'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, basically damage coming from mainly from spark charges. And then for defense, we're running a damage taken from mana for health set up over here. See, I'm at about 92% of damage taken from damage taken to mana, basically. Right, so basically this ends up being extremely tanky, right? Now you can see in the intro that we were just, the T4 Jorva could pretty much do nothing. You can just kind of AFK her, and that's the case for a lot of bosses and that kind of stuff. You know, even at very high corruption, they aren't doing like very little damage to you because of all of the damage mitigation we have. This character is just stacking layers and layers of reduced damage basically to achieve. We're pretty much at like 99% damage reduced. My gear, first of all, we got to go over this a little bit. My gear is not really all that good. Like I've got the defensive part working for the build, but there's a lot of room to improve for the offense side. Mainly because, like, see, we have only 58 intelligence, where ideally you have like 100 plus intelligence. So we're pretty much like missing out like, half of our damage pretty much. And that can be changed by fixing up my gear, my items. I'm, also missing quite a lot of like spell crit multi, a lot of these things that you're, going to have to get on like legendary items. You can see my Relic is pretty bad. So a lot of gear, room for improvement for damage, but we do have the defense side working, and that's basically the core part of the build that we're going to go over. All right, so let's run a quick monolith over here. I'll have a boss fight at the end of the video because I don't want these showcases taking up too much time. So we'll just run a quick monolith, and then later on in the video you can go check out the boss skill if you're interested in that. Alright, so this is like 370 corruption or so. So not like super high, right? But I have played a similar character this last league or last season, and I went all the way to 1,000 corruption, and that character was a lot less tanky than this character. I mean, damage was a lot better because he had a lot better gear. But 1,000 corruption with a character that had worse defense. So this character or this build definitely could go all the way up to 1,000 again, pretty easily, I'd say. Once you get some better gear, get your intelligence, get your crit multi and that kind of stuff, then definitely doable. So, one thing, yeah, this character is missing like the amulet I'm using is like the wrong amulet. So you can see I'm probably going to be getting stunned like quite a lot in these monoliths, but just because we're missing out on the Strong Mind amulet that has like stun immunity based on your mana or stun threshold, so you end up getting like what 2k stun threshold, which is quite nice. But yeah, so here is the boss, so we'll just kind of stand here and attack him, and eventually he will go down. Maybe we can use our Flame Ward because that does give us a little bit of increased damage. All right, so I did actually kind of want to get some better gear. Oh wow, that's really nice. Nice idol. All right, so I wanted to get some better gear before I did the build guide because, you can see damage isn't really super amazing, right? But it is what it is, and I think I do want to try some other builds too, so we're gonna make the build guide now. But I do have a ideal setup in the planner. You can go, we'll go over later. All right, so before we get into the skills and the gear, we do want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the build. because there is a couple of things to note. Like I mentioned before, we are running this damage dealt to mana for health. And you can see we don't really have a lot of health on our gear. We're basically focusing on endurance and endurance threshold. You can see 923 endurance threshold and 60 endurance. There's a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, we do need endurance because with this new helmet, the seed helmet, 50% or 52% of our endurance applies to the damage dealt to mana. Now, last patch, it was pretty much impossible to run 92% damage dealt to mana for health. You could only get to like 60, 70 because the drain on your mana was just way too much. You would just take way too much damage on your mana, and yeah, it just wasn't possible. But thanks to the helmet, with the endurance applying to the damage, so it's about 30% damage reduction to the damage you take on your mana, it's actually possible to push all the way up to these crazy numbers like 92%. I'd say like 90% is sort of a goal that you should have for the build. Okay, so that's kind of why we need the percent endurance, right? And then why are we building endurance threshold instead of health, right? Because it's kind of a big topic, right? It's like building health is better than endurance. For most builds, yeah, that's probably true, but for this build specifically, I think building endurance threshold is the way to go. I did do the test on the numbers. Endurance threshold was a little bit worse than building just, pure life, but not really all that much. You would have to get full exalted life instead of this endurance threshold, and even then you would need like 3k life to actually be better than endurance threshold, and that's actually pretty hard on a mage build. You think about it, you don't really have that many nodes that increase your life on the tree, and it's not even really that much different than building endurance threshold at the end of the day. But the one thing that endurance threshold gives is better recovery, right? So because we have less health, our leech is more effective, right? Because we're reducing the damage we take to our health, but the amount of health hasn't changed, so our leech or our health regen is like, gets a lot stronger. So that's why I think, mainly because of the recovery side and how easy it is to build endurance threshold, that endurance threshold is going to be way better than just building, health and relying on the normal endurance threshold you get from, building health. Okay, so that's the reason why we're building endurance threshold. And then another thing is, like, why are we having ward because, endurance doesn't apply to your ward. So isn't ward kind of useless on this build? And not really, actually, because the damage dealt to mana before health only applies to your health. It doesn't affect endurance either, your, ward either. So that is actually a good thing, because it is kind of hard to get a lot of mana recovery in Last Epoch. Even with Mana Strike and all this kind of stuff, it is, you can take a lot of damage to your mana. So ward is actually providing extra sort of pseudo mana recovery, right? Because we do have some ward generation from our Frostclaw or from our Mana Strike and that kind of stuff. So that actually does give some extra, protection for our mana, right? So we take a lot of damage to our health, to our mana, and then we can generate some ward, and that's going to give you sort of a buffer to sort of give you some more time to recuperate your mana while your ward is protecting, taking the damage for you. So in that sense, having ward is actually very nice, but it's not, you don't really have to go all out on ward, but just the normal ward we're getting from our, just speccing into these skills and that we get just passively on the tree is actually enough to sort of, give you that nice balance where it does a good job in protecting your mana as well. Okay, so let's go over some of the skills we're using. So we're using Mana Strike, Frostclaw, Lightning Blast, and then we have our Enchant Weapon buff and Flame Ward. Basically the way this kind of works is, so we're using Dragorous Claw, and this says it has a chance to cast Lightning Blast when we crit with our Frostclaw. And Frostclaw has a note here that has a chance to cast Frostclaw when we hit an enemy with a melee attack. So Mana Strike is a melee attack. So whenever we attack with Mana Strike, we proc Frostclaw, and then Frostclaw then procs Lightning Blast. Lightning Blast then does a lot of stuff for us with getting Spark Charges and Lightning Aegis. And Frostclaw itself does, Right now it's kind of a small amount of damage because of, you know, we don't really have that much damage on the character yet from the gear and that kind of stuff. But Frostclaw gives us ward, so like we mentioned, ward is actually quite nice because of basically it's like kind of pseudo mana regen or mana sustain, right? And then also does give cleanse, so pretty much like you're never going to be poisoned. Like you get a bleed on you, it's going to be off in a couple of seconds, or like even like just 1 second, right? One cast of Frostclaw and it's gone. So that's where Frostclaw is actually quite nice. And we also do have some chance to cast Frostclaw on melee hit from the passive tree, so overall like 50% chance to cast it, so it's going off like quite a bit. Alright, so for Mana Strike, the way we're building this is basically we go for the spark charges, and then we're going for teleporting strikes, and then we get the critical mana. So this is basically all of our mana regen from Mana Strike. Mana Strike, so it gives you a default of 15 mana when you hit an enemy, but because we're using teleporting strikes, that mana gets reduced by 80%. That's actually quite big, right? Losing a lot of your mana regen, and this teleporting strikes minus 80% is also affects this like Arcanist Blade and Mana Drain, where it's like the percent mana gain and the plus like flat mana gain. These all get affected by or reduced by teleporting strikes, but the critical mana isn't reduced by teleporting strikes. So we're always going to be getting 15 mana per crit. So it's per crit, right? So if you hit 2 enemies and they both crit, you get 30 mana. So that's why this is very powerful. We're getting all of our base crit from Celestial Precision because we have, you know, tons of mana and that kind of stuff. So this gives us all of our crit. And then since we are stacking mana, I mean, right now, not that much, but ideally you have like 1000 mana or something like that. So we are taking Mana Spark over here to get some nice flat added damage to Mana Strike. I mean, it's not that much, right? I think you can get your tooltip to like 60k to 100k on Mana Strike if you have good gear. So this ends up doing, you know, adding some nice damage. And then with the remaining points, we go into Rune Sap, because this is like on single targets, like 180% or like maybe like around 200 increased spell damage, which is quite big for just 2 points. Right, so Frostclaw. Main thing we're doing here is first we're proccing it via from our melee strikes over here, and then we do have to reduce the mana cost of Frostclaw because, you know, the more mana these skills cost, the more mana it's going to drain, and that means we're not going to be able to sustain our mana when we take damage. So we're reducing the mana cost with the Frozen Rain here, so we're getting some minus mana cost here, over here, and then some more minus mana cost on Spark of Celerity or whatever here. After that we go over here, so all the projectiles can hit the same target. It's going to give you more procs for Lightning Blast. This does add a lot of mana cost, however, so that's something to note. And then we do have the cleanse over here. So that's basically Frostclaw. And then let's go over Lightning Blast next. So for Lightning Blast, basically here we go for the extra chains, or the chains repeat to the same target. And then we're going to go for the spark charges over here. And then with the remaining points, we added into Lightning Attunement for Lightning Aegis. This is up like, what, 50% of the time, so that's quite big. And one thing to note about the Chain Lightning, Convergence rounds up. I've seen so many people having 4 points in Lightning Chain with no extra chains from anywhere else, but having 4 points actually does nothing, right? Because this rounds up, right? So, and all of our chains are halved. So we have 3 here, half of 3 is 1.5, that goes up to 2. Now, if I put 1 more point in here, that's going to be 4 additional chains, and then it's reduced by half, so it's 2. So it's exactly the same. 3 points, 4 points, exactly the same, but you just have more mana costs. So you're like basically hurting yourself by adding 4 points in here, unless you have some other kind of extra chain, which you can't really get unless you're self-casting it. So only have 3 points here. And let's go over Enchant Weapon. Enchant Weapon, basically attack speed, duration, reduced mana cost, and the last points you can put wherever you want. Just don't put it in this because, well, we don't need a cleanse. We already have cleanse from Frostclaw, so it's kind of pointless to put it here. And then for Flame Ward, basically I want to go for a full tank setup. So we're getting the extra charge, we're getting all the damage reduction, the duration, and the last points, I just put it in here for some extra damage. It is pretty nice, 150% increased damage, so that's pretty nice. Okay, so that is the skills we're using. Let's go over some of the gear. So for the helmet, the most important stats are going to be the endurance applies to all damage dealt to mana. You want this to be as high as possible. After that, the damage delta mana for health is going to be, those are the two most important stats on the helmet. As for what you want to slam on here, it's going to be damage delta mana for health. Now, if you do have a 2 LP, then you probably want to get intelligence after that. And then I think suffixes are like, I don't know, there isn't really that many. Probably put on like armor and reduce damage from crits if you have a 3 LP, but that's like, I don't know, I don't really think that's going to be possible because this has a very, you know, it's very rare to get LP on this helmet. So damage delta mana for health, and if you get 2, then get intelligence. Okay, so for the dagger, most important stat here is going to be the implicit, the spell crit, and then after that we want to get the all resistances roll as high as possible and the spell crit multi. I'd say even the resistances are more important than the crit multi, because if we look here, we are actually not even building any resistance anywhere on our gear except for void resistance. If you look here, void resistance, the only place we're building it, everything else is coming from our passive tree, blessings, and a couple of items. Get the resistance roll, and then for exalted affixes, definitely get the melee attack speed. That's like top priority. And then armor shred, because I guess you can get armor shred other places, but I think it's good to get it on the weapon because it has a very high roll, like very high value here. And then crit multi, or I guess crit multi is ideal, or spell crit could be good. We're only at 80% for this, like for spark charges, or it'd be like 80%, but for everything else it's going to be like 100% crit chance because they have like crit built into the tree, like for lightning blast and that kind of stuff. But for spark charges, yeah, 80%. So you could go and get spell crit chance or crit chance to get this to 100% if you want, but I think 80 is totally fine. Right, so that's the dagger. Let's talk about the offhand, fragment of enigma. Basically here, most important stat is going to be the more damage for spark charges applied by melee hits. You want this to be like 100 plus. And then the spark charge area, and probably lastly the intelligence. And for what you want to slam here, there's a couple things you can do, right? You can do spell crit chance, you can do crit multi, you could do flat mana, and those probably are the ones you want to get. And then you do need to get void resistance somewhere. Now, if you get it on the fragment on your offhand, it actually rolls higher than if you get it on something like your gloves or something like that. So I guess you don't really need to get it here, but there isn't really much else to put on here. So if you have a 3 LP, then go for void res. If not, then you get the void res on the gloves. Okay, so amulet, there's a couple amulet choices we can use. I like strong mind because I guess first of all it has some nice, you know, it has like flat mana, which is quite nice. If you look here, our stun avoidance is, we're getting 2,400 stun avoidance from our amulet, right? So that is actually quite important because you see our health is low, our ward is low, so you're going to be stunned quite a bit, which is like really annoying. So getting some stun avoidance is quite nice. So that's why I think strong mind, very nice. There's some other ones we can do. If you want some more damage, there is like devotion. Devotion's quite nice because of, well, it gives you some percent endurance, which opens up some other slots on your gear, gives you increased lightning damage and lightning pen, which is quite like really big, right? So that's quite nice for damage. Aurora's time glass also very nice as well. Omnis, I guess, I mean, okay, +1 to all skills. And then Orion's Eye, this one's also really nice too because you don't have to worry about void res, so you don't have to build void res anywhere. You get a lot of flat mana, so it's okay, right? Pretty nice, like defensive option. And then there's the Nihilus amulet. This one has +2 to all skills, more armor, resistances, move speed, percent increased mana, frenzy. So this one is like really good. So I think if you're not going to use a strong mind, then a Nihilus is probably going to be the amulet to go for. Okay, so that's the amulet. Let's go over the relic. So Stormcarved Testament. This thing, basically, you want to just prioritize the flat mana on here. That's the only thing that matters. And then if you can, you probably want to slam intelligence here. And then if you do have like 2 LP, you could go for crit multi. I think we can get it on these. Yeah, we can get crit multi. You can go for spell crit. Then you can also just go for flat mana if you want. So probably something like that. Oh yeah, so for the relic, there is like another relic you could use. Yeah, so Knowledge of the Erased Mage. It's kind of nice because it has mana, gives +1 to all skills, damage dealt to mana for health, and endurance applies to, you know, additional health per missing mana. So this is like pseudo endurance. Basically, as you lose mana, you get more endurance threshold. It's kind of, I didn't like it because you can't really see how much you're getting visually, so you don't really know when it's applying. And I guess you could do the math and kind of like, figure out how much mana, as you lose how much mana, then you're getting X amount of extra endurance threshold and that kind of stuff. But I didn't really like it. It's not always active anyways, and Stormcarved Testament does give you more damage because of the lightning penetration, basically. So that, end of the day, Stormcarved Testament is going to be better, but this one is kind of nice for like budget, I guess. Okay, so for the boots, I'm using Transient Rest because, well, it has the current mana gained as ward when you stop moving, and so that's kind of nice. Like we mentioned, ward is giving you a sort of a buffer for your mana, so we can end up building a decent amount of mana. So every time we stop moving, we get like 500, 600 ward, which is quite nice. But you don't really need these boots. It's not like required. These do give you a lot of nice resistances. Like you mentioned, we're not building any of these resistances. Physical, necrotic, poison. If you didn't use these boots, you would have to build necrotic and poison somewhere, which is actually doable, right? You could get it on the gloves. There's like some slots you can get it. You can change your blessings around. I'm using the armor blessing, but you can use the endurance blessing, and then that'll open up quite a lot of suffixes. You can see we have endurance here, got endurance here. You can take those endurance slots out, and then you can build necrotic and poison. So there's a lot of things you can do to swap that around. Definitely do that if you are wanting to use a different pair of boots or having trouble getting your endurance and that kind of stuff. Other boots that are going to be good is going to be the okay, where is those boots? It's the Blood of the Exile boots. If you can find them. Yeah, Blood of the Exile. So these boots, really, really good because plus 12 intelligence. I guess the plus strength is also really nice for increased armor. Blood of the Exile for damage is going to be a good damage option. I'm pretty much prioritizing movement speed because I want to move fast, but if you want more damage, then definitely go for the T7 intelligence instead of the movement speed. And I probably might even do that in the end of the day because, I don't know, like, 8 intelligence versus 16 is pretty big. Okay, so that is the boots. Let's go over the ring over here. So Phantom's Grip. Now this isn't really like super necessary. Like you could play with 2 opal rings. Basically they're going to be exactly the same. Endurance threshold, endurance, intelligence, strength. Basically, yeah, that's like your ring slot, and if you have another ring, you just put it here. And the reason we're using Phantom's Grip is, well, it gives you % increased mana, so that's nice, but the base crit +2 base crit is really, really big for getting up your base crit for your spark charges. So that's why I'm using one of those. You basically need the endurance threshold, or actually, yeah, I guess, yeah, we do need the endurance threshold to hit, a good amount over here. So basically that. For the belt, endurance threshold, cooldown recovery. With cooldown recovery on your belt, the opal ring, and from the passives we're getting from the sorcerer, our enchant weapon is going to have 100% uptime, so cooldown recovery here is pretty important. After that, the prefixes on the belt, there's like really nothing all that good, so you don't really have to worry that much about them. But that is the belt. For the gloves, I'm using just some plated gauntlets, but you could go for some unique gloves if you want. Like the swaddling of the erased. These could be quite nice because of the, more damage you can get here. There might be some other ones you can go take a look at. But yeah, so plated gauntlets because of the % endurance. And then we're basically here, we're prioritizing the melee attack speed or intelligence, whichever one. It's up to you. If you want to attack faster, then go for attack speed. Just want more int for more flat damage on spark charges, then go for the int. And then after that, your suffixes, you kind of fill in whatever kind of resistance or endurance that you need over here. You can also get frailty. So frailty, there's only 2 spots to get it in this build, either on your gloves or on your amulet. Right, so choose whichever one's up to you. And that is pretty much the gear. So let's go over some of the idols over here. Idols right now, just mana, 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 mana. And then we have mana efficiency with Frostclaw and mana and Frostclaw. So the more important one is going to be the mana efficiency with Frostclaw over the mana. And then for the small idols, we're just using mana and then whatever resistance we need. So fire or cold. Usually it's going to be the case. For the blessings, for Black Sun, we get crit multi. For the what was on Reign of Dragons, all resistances. And then Spirits of Fire, we get the flat armor or the % endurance, whichever one you need. And then for the Age of Winter, we go for Endurance Threshold, and for Ending of the Storm, we get the Shred Lightning Resistance. So that is the blessings, and let's go over some of the passives real quick. So starting out in the Mage class, we're just getting the Intelligence, and then we're getting some health because we need to spend points. Get the attack and cast speed, and we get the crit chance, crit multi. Right, after that we're going into Spellblade, and we're going into the Elemental Affinity over here, getting some ward, intelligence, and then we're going to go for the Arcane Shielding and the Frostclaw proc, and then attack speed, and a few points in Shattered Aegis. Like, you only really need 1 point pretty much. After that, in Sorcerer, getting Intelligence, Spell Crit, getting some of this mana stuff for getting the lightning damage and our lightning leech. This is like all the leech we have in the build, so pretty important to get this. After that, the crit chance, crit multi, and then Arcane Insight. Basically skip this part till like the very end. I'll have sliders for progression in the build planner. You can go check out later. And then we go to Mana Bulwark and cooldown recovery, basically. So that is sort of the passives we're using. Alright, so that is the build guide, guys. Pretty much the end of the video. Made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll have a boss kill at the end of the video, so you can go check that out. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.
Geralt was waiting.